The pharaohs fell and the nomarchs rose to power. Could you believe this once happened in ancient Egypt? Yes, it did. This was a time when Egypt lost its once glorious state and was at the mercy of invaders. Slowly, a renowned empire was brought to its knees, not just by foreign invaders, but also by several years of economic crisis and drought. And this led Egypt into a terrifying dark age. How did such an unfortunate incident befall Egypt? What are the terrifying discoveries from the dark age of Egypt? These we shall unveil in this video, right here in A Secret World. The Dark Age didn't just creep into Egypt overnight. It started after the old Egyptian kingdom fell. Here's a little backstory. During the New Kingdom period, ancient Egyptian civilization reached its highest point of authority, wealth, and influence. This happened during the rulership of legendary pharaohs such as Tutankhamun, Thutmose III, and Ramses II, who was thought to be the biblical pharaoh of the Exodus story. Nobody knows for sure. At its peak, the Egyptian Empire ruled over a large territory extending from modern-day Egypt up through the northern Sinai Peninsula and the ancient land of Canaan. Canaan was the ancient name for what is now Israel, the West Bank and Gaza, Jordan, and the southern parts of Syria and Lebanon. You can imagine how powerful ancient Egypt was. The unfortunate fall of the empire began with the murder of Ramses III in 1155 BC. The once great Egyptian empire was slowly brought to its knees by a series of catastrophic incidents, which included centuries of drought, economic crises, and opportunistic foreign invaders. Ramses III ruled Egypt for 31 years and is widely regarded as the final great pharaoh. His reign happened to coincide with the intrusion of the Sea Peoples, one of the most tense and difficult periods in ancient historical experience. The Egyptians had a difficult time dealing with these Sea People. The exact personality of the Sea Peoples is unconfirmed, but most studies indicate they were a multi-ethnic band of refugees from the Western Mediterranean who came east in search of new territories to colonize and occupy after being forced to flee by famine and drought conditions. During the reigns of Merenptah and Ramses III, terrorizing fleets of Sea Peoples might have just tried to attack Egypt at least twice. The Egyptian navy and Ramses III skillfully thwarted the second huge Sea People's attack in 1177 BC, and the pharaoh memorialized the triumph on the walls of his temple and tomb complex in Medinet Habu. Unfortunately, the joy was short-lived. Ramses III was successful in repelling the Sea Peoples, but not in foiling an internal coup by a bitter and twisted secondary queen in his harem. As such, put your faith in science to figure out what killed him. Ramses III was knifed through the neck and murdered in 1155 BC. According to CT scans of his mummy, this unfortunate incident marked the beginning of Egypt's demise. Egypt was not the same after the death of Ramses III. The other pharaohs after him never measured up. Pepys II Neferkare reign is regarded at the beginning of the Old Kingdom's downturn. His second name, Neferkare, means beautiful is the Ka of Re. At the age of 6, this pharaoh ascended to the throne of Egypt. Pepi II is widely regarded as history's longest reigning king, with some sources claiming he ruled for 94 years. According to different sources, he reigned for 64 years, as per his ancient origins. He reigned from around 2278 BC. His mother was his guardian at first. Pepi II Neferkare kept insisting on his slaves covering themselves in honey to ward off pesky flies. Indeed, because of the insect's speed and steadfast tenacity, the fly has evolved into being regarded as a symbol of perseverance, and gold flies have been awarded to military men who have displayed such characteristics in the battle zone. Pepi II Neferkare was known for his strange behavior in general. The preserved letter from Pepi II Neferkare to Hakhfer, ruler of Aswan and commander of the Pepi II's expedition to Nubia, reveals that Pepi II Neferkare commanded that the dwarfs be captured. However, as many Egyptologists have figured out, the downturn began long before Pepi II came to power. The primary cause of the decline was the vizier's office, which had become inherited rather than merit-based. In other words, the position began to transition from the family that served as the ruling pharaoh's protege to a member of that same family, and a member of that same family will indeed end up serving as the subsequent vizier. As a result, the nomarchs became more powerful than the ruling ruler, and they began to assert their dominance over other nomes by invading them. When Egypt needed a strong leader to bring order and stability, it got a geriatric ruler in the form of Pepi II and his unusually long tenure. His long, weak reign shattered the foundations of the government and brought the 200-year-long First Intermediate Period to an end. Egypt's consistent eras are recognized as kingdoms, whereas the times of political unrest or destabilization are known as intermediate periods. The First Intermediate Period of Egypt was the period of Egyptian history that followed the Old Kingdom and predated the Middle Kingdom. The name was given to the era by Egyptologists in the 19th century CE, not by the ancient Egyptians. What caused this period to be so dark? This was due to a weak central government and conflict between Lower and Upper Egypt. This era was categorized by divided power and was chaotic and lawless. When the central government of the Old Kingdom, which had originally been built on the system of Egypt's early dynastic period, crumbled, the country was thrown into chaos. The lack of historical records is the most significant barrier to knowing this period. The Old Kingdom had kept Egypt's history in stone by building pyramids and grave structures that told their stories. With no central administration to oversee affairs during the first intermediate period, each independent region took care of itself, with varying degrees of care provided to conserve the period's history. Because it seemed so anti-ethical to Egyptian value systems, subsequent periods referred to this era as a Dark Age. Egypt has had many rulers, some were immature, some were power-drunk, and some were simply sinister. Ever heard of the cannibal king Unas, or Unis as he is otherwise called? Unis was the ninth and final pharaoh of Egypt's 5th dynasty during the Old Kingdom. Unas succeeded Djedkare Isesi and ruled for 15 to 30 years in the mid-24th century BC. His reign was categorized by economic decline. Evidence has emerged indicating that Egypt may have dabbled in cannibalism in the past. I know we all want to see the incredible pyramids, hieroglyphics, and terrifying mummies, among other things. However, evidence suggests that there was a bloodthirsty king who reigned in ancient Egypt. King Unas is one who eats men and lives on gods. Lords of messengers who dispatches his messages. It is grasper of forelocks, living in Kihu, who binds them for King Unas. This puzzling passage was an excerpt from the pyramid texts, also known as the ancient Egyptian cannibal hymn found in his tomb in Saqqara. It referred to the king as a cannibalistic devourer of gods in the afterlife. This work was discovered inside the king's enclosed death pyramid and is one of the oldest long Egyptian texts. This text may or may not have been recited during the burial ceremony in conjunction with an animal sacrifice. This refers to human sacrifices, but was this poem merely symbolic or true? Who can say? The Unas funerary cult, founded at his death, lasted till the end of the Old Kingdom and may have withstood the tumultuous first intermediate period. The second intermediate period is the period that follows the Middle Kingdom of Egypt and precedes the New Kingdom of Egypt. Between 1677 and 1550 BCE, ancient Egypt was split into warring factions during the second intermediate period. This stems from the entry of the Hyksos, who ruled Egypt's north but were unable to expand their power to the south. During the second intermediate period, who ruled Egypt? Egypt was ruled by rival factions. The Hyksos ruled in Avaris in the north, the Egyptians ruled in Thebes in the center, and the Nubians ruled in the south. This period, like the first intermediate period of Egypt, is traditionally described as chaotic, devoid of cultural progressions, and ungovernable. Egypt's second intermediate period was a time of internal divisions, and records from that time are ambiguous or missing. The third intermediate period of ancient Egypt started with the passing of Pharaoh Ramesses XI in 1077 BC, bringing the New Kingdom to an end, and was eventually succeeded by the Late Period. The Late Bronze Age, fall of civilizations in the ancient Near East and Eastern Mediterranean, along with the Greek Dark Ages, coincided with an era of decline and political turmoil. When Ramesses XI died in the early 11th century BC, the dynasty passed to Smendes, a northern relative of Amun's high priest. Smendes' reign began the third intermediate period, 400 years of highly polarized regimes and diffused power. The third intermediate period laid the groundwork for many developments in art and culture that can be seen across the first millennium. Although several specifics are still unknown and many questions need to be answered, this period of Egyptian history can be divided into several stages. Egypt was ruled by pharaohs ruling from Tanis in the eastern delta and high priest of Amun ruling from Thebes during the first of these. Dynasty 21. The two centers of power had generally positive ties. The second phase began in 945 BC when the throne was passed to a powerful family of Libyan descent ruling in the eastern delta. Egypt's former western adversaries have now become its rulers. Despite their Libyan ancestry, these pharaohs governed as Egyptians. The first among them, Sheshonq I, is known in the Bible as Shishak, the Egyptian ruler who plundered Jerusalem in year 5 of Solomon's sons, Rehoboam's reign. Egypt will always remain a classic example of a nation that experienced different political and economic situations, yet the nation has managed to stand strong against all odds. Let us know what you think of these discoveries in the comments. Thank you for watching, subscribe and turn on post notifications to be updated on our latest videos.